Okay, so this is the second part here of this series, a three-part series going through the zodiac. We are going into each sign. We're going over the characteristics of each sign, and specifically, we're going into why each sign has been designated as masculine or feminine. For the purposes of this series, I'm calling it modality. I don't know if I went into this too deeply on the last video because it's been a few months. I use that word kind of not quite literally. It's a masculinity and femininity, as we talked about before, is an exchange of energy. Traditionally in astrology, modalities actually are three components. That would be cardinal, fixed, and mutable. In general, when it comes down to the concepts of masculine and feminine, it's extremely controversial in today's day and age. And I know it sounds weird to say that, but the reality is, I mean, I'll even go to like astrology forums, and they'll call it, masculine, like external or externally focused, and feminine, internally focused, and they'll use those words instead because they don't, these words trigger people, right? And it's an unfortunate state of reality. I think the word actually is gender, but we can't use that word anymore currently because people will just turn off the video and not think about it. So modality which is in terms of direction or directionality of these forces, because that's kind of what they are. Is just the way I've chosen to go about doing it, but it has its own problems. That aside, let's continue here. We are going into the sign of Leo. Leo. And the house associated with Leo, the fifth house, it is not only just a masculine sign, it's sort of the masculine sign that everyone tends to think of when it comes down to some of the either the most stereotypical traits of masculinity, maybe the more, some might say, the more obnoxious traits of masculinity. Sometimes, right on down to perhaps even where you would find your quote-unquote toxic masculine traits. But Leo is where your ego is solidified. It's ruled by the sun. And the sun is ego. It's, Leo, like the sun, it's masculine because it only radiates. The sun does not have a receptive quality. It's only giving, in energy. It's only, extent, It's the energy. It's the rays of the sun. They radiate outward, and there's no inward pulling force within the sun. Everything is generated within the sun in terms of the energy that it has. So when we are thinking about Leo, it's a lot like that. This is where, just like the energy within the sun, that's like an internal reactor. That's what happens in Leo, because your internal creative power, your creative being, is being solidified. It's the reason why the fifth house is also related to creativity. This is where you do your arts or your theater, and you express yourself, and you really identify the I am within Leo. It's also the component where you would find the concept of sovereignty, right? That you are a being, you have rulership, you have ownership of that, really, of the territory that you can claim, mind you. That's not to say that you own everything, but within your kingdom, that kingdom is yours. Again, a lot of this concept is about what you've been able to build, take from within yourself, radiate outwards, and for those that receive it, by the way, and that enjoy it, they usually do so from some semblance of having shared, what it is shared in that identity. It's there's a relational component between Leo and obviously its opposite sign, Aquarius, where you typically find the group. But this is the sign that is a part of what I would like to call like sort of the group access. Or axis between Aquarius and Leo. It's not only about royalty, but it's royalty for your group, for your people, what you can give to your people, and your motivation to giving to your people. Because again, from in, given outward. you know, it's you in order to reign as king, you know, because there is that bit of it within Leo of, you know, of kingship. In order to be a good king, you give, right? And so, you know, all of these small components, you know, altogether do, you know, are well in line with what masculine energy is and really truly is. You know, it's actually the sign that that I have for my son. It's either I was born late August, so whether it's Vedic or you know, or traditional, it's you know, I'm a Leo through and through, and a lot of what I do is you know, in terms of creative thoughts, but you know, that's a separate thing altogether. But it's kind of, I wanted to do it some justice as part of the reason why I didn't do it. And even then, I'm just only touching on the sign. It's much deeper than this, but regardless, so you know, you know, in general, now that you've created something, now that you put something out there. You know, it's now that you have everything around you, again, there's always this back and forth. You put something out there and then you become aware of it. You perceive it. It comes back in. That leads us to the next sign, Virgo. Virgo, it's ruled by Mercury. Mercury is a neutral, you know, considered to be a neutral planet altogether. But again, Mercury has a masculine quality found in Gemini. Its feminine quality is found in here. Virgo's very typical concept is it's very perceptive of the detail, and when you're perceiving something, you look at it, you pull in, and you're able to see imperfections, right? Virgo is where you get perfection. You know, it's you pull something in and you're able to feel where it is not quite right. And so Virgos are very diligent with the details. They perceive, they process, they feel what doesn't fit, they make it perfect, right? There's also the concept of it's the virgin sign, you know, is another thing that people talk about. Virginity in its entirety. I'm not going to go too deep into it here. It is a feminine concept because femininity is about what you pull in, what you take in. Being discerning in that is one of the you know, one of the qualities of those going you know, through the feminine path. Maybe I could argue like a right-handed feminine path, but that's, I won't really, like, you know, don't quote me on that at this point, because that's something that just kind of popped in my mind just talking about it. Virgo is just interesting because it's constantly, you know, it's perceiving and it's finding imperfections, you know, and it's clearing up those imperfections. It's pulling the data together and it's parsing through the data and getting everything in its proper place. But it's always about what it pulls in at that point. This is where you perfect your profession too. Sixth house is the work and services that you do for others. You know, so you're, you know, in the age of Pisces that we came from, you know, that we're getting out of right now, while, you know, the theme of the age in Pisces was about our spirituality. It's about truth, because Jupiter, which rules Pisces, is there to get you to, you know, raise yourself to truth and become aware of truth. Pisces is a feminine truth. That was our focus. But every age has a shadow to it that becomes a part of it. And, you know, for the past 2,000 years, how you've been able to really define yourself was based on your profession. What do you do? Well, you know, it's like, and the most skilled professionals perfected the art. Virgo is about that perfecting of that art. And again, it flows. You know, again, the fifth house flows into the sixth house. You know, there's a creative force that happens in the fifth house, or the fifth sign. But well, you know, naturally, when you get to that sixth, you do tend to look at your creation to a certain extent and think about how do you make it better, how do you regiment it better, how do you perfect it, and again, it's you know, you take in more than you put out. That's another big part of this, but you know, it's not just a processing of detail that happens in Virgo. It's a reception of detail, and it's trying to make something sit right. But like all earth signs, there's a diligence, there's an active, you know, component to it. Just like in Taurus, you know, it's feminine because the focus is about how do I what do I do to get the food? What do I do to buy that rug? What do I do to get this, these items? Well, you work for it. You have to go out and actively grab it, do the work, get the money, or what have you. Like that, like with all earth signs, there is an active component, and that component can make it seem almost like they're masculine, because we always think that activeness is a necessary component of masculinity. That is not true. You find active components both with femininity and masculinity. Always refer back to that Tai Chi symbol, where you have the two magatamas. They're inverse images of each other. So you will find some bits in either action. And it's important to kind of understand that, that distinctiveness. So, going here into the next sign, Libra. Now, keep in mind, the first 6 signs are associated specifically within yourself, right? This is part of your personal growth and journey that occurs, and then the last 6 signs are your development of very similar concepts outside of yourself. So it becomes more outwardly focused, collectively focused is the idea. So whereas the first 6 signs and are much more individually focused. And so we're going here towards Libra. Libra is opposite of Aries. So whereas Aries is about the self, and your relationship with yourself, Libra is about the self's relationship with others, and specifically with one other. Libra is the sign of partnerships. You usually tend to think one-on-one. Not always, but it is about fairness, and this is the sign that's associated with relationships. It's a sign associated with marriage, and marriage also found in the 7th house. This is the masculine component of the masculine sign that Libra, that Venus rules. And this is a fun one because, again, if you were to ask me ages ago, and in fact I've seen these, these masculine feminine scales of which sign is very masculine and which sign is feminine. And it's funny because I've seen people, put Libra way more on the masculine or the feminine end of these signs. And sometimes they'll put like Capricorn, over, a sign we'll get to later, a Capricorn over Libra in terms of, how masculine a sign is. And it's because Libra really does have so many qualities that are more Venusian, and Venus obviously being represented by a female. Not going too deep into the concept, I did talk about it in another video a little bit. It is a feminine planet. There's more of a receptive quality, to Venus as a planet. So this is her masculine expression, the expression where, she's giving, right, or the, more than she's taking. But Libra would be another example of something that really breaks the paradigm of our traditional ideas of what is masculine or feminine. And it's a sign that becomes so concerned about the other person, and it's a sign that is so interested in making sure that the other person is happy and being good for the other person. And to the point where Libras do tend to lose their sense of self. And that's the component that people like to say makes them effeminate. And I would argue no. I mean, it's not necessarily about self, it's about the transfer of energy, right? Libras will work towards the relationship. And Libras don't get much out of it outside of maintaining the relationship, right? And so long as Libras are fair to themselves as well as the other person, it's really just a matter of maintaining those partnerships. And this is probably one I'll like to get towards, more later, but I'm just kind of doing a stream of consciousness video here just to kind of get these out. But the mindset of Libra, like any of the air signs, it's about what you put into the relationship to make it work. You get into a relationship by caring about what the other person thinks, and you're not just listening to them, but you're talking with them, you're doing things with them, you're actively concerned about them, and you work at it. You put energy into it. And you know what you get out of that relationship. I mean, sure, there's an exchange, and you know we can all guess what some of those exchanges are. But it's you know again, masculine Libras put more energy into the relationship than they necessarily get out of it. But you know, like any of that energy exchange, and it's about what you can put into something rather than what you can receive. Again, all of the air signs have that kind of component to it, and you know, it's kind of flips our a little bit on the head our natural, normal, you know, modern interpretations of masculinity and femininity that the ancients probably would argue, not quite. So you know, and the funny thing about Libra, you know, going into Scorpio, before I jump into this sign, you know, this is the part where contracts are made. This is the sign where you look towards someone else because they have something that you like and that works well with you, and you want to partner with them so you can be a part of a grander endeavor. And that's where this is the part where you do hammer out your contract. 7th house is related to contracts. You know, you detail out how the partnership is going to work. You detail out, you know, whether in terms of what you detail out to be equitable or what have you. It's not, Libra tries to be 50-50. It parses out what is 50-50. But you know, I tend to like to say that, but how these partnerships really play out in the exchange of resources, in the exchange of you know, who gives what, that happens in the next sign. It's the, you know, with regards to Scorpio. This is the sign that has, it's a very interesting one. It's this is a power sign, you know, and you actually considered to be the most dangerous in the zodiac. This is obviously, it's feminine. It's ruled by Mars. This is Mars's feminine, you know, feminine energy. And which is why, again, it's when you look at everything that Scorpio is associated with, this is the area where these contracts kind of play out. There isn't necessarily an equity, real quick, or it isn't equality, I should say, in Scorpio and the things that play out in the house associated, the 8th house. It's because this is another power sign. You know, this is where, you know, someone will be maybe sometimes giving more than the others, you know, but it's equitable because of, you know, the power dynamics involved. Scorpio is related to power, you know. In other words, you know, if you have a foot soul, you know, if you have someone who's weak and pathetic and would die without you, and you decide to go into partnership with them, they will give all of their effort for the partnership, and you might give nothing or next to nothing, so long as they're still alive and so long as they're able to, you know, continue this partnership, so to speak, or the dynamics of this partnership can continue. It's not about what's equal. It's about what can be maintained. There can be a cruelty aspect associated, you know, with the power dynamics that occur in this house. There's a bit of war that goes on, you know, in this house. And again, it's Mars is, you know, rules, you know, is the god of war, and what he brings to the table, you know, is going to be warlike. But it's this one. It's a water sign. It has a very strong passive component. You know, the war when war is waged in this house, it's done so usually through poisons, you know, through passive but deadly means. You know, this is the sign. It's a fixed sign, so there's a depth to it. You know, these are the martial-like qualities I think I can associate with Scorpio, because Scorpio is the one who will, if you're not careful around a Scorpio, they are the ones that literally will stab you in the back once they see an opening, right? And it's not about it pressing its will upon the other. It's about waiting for the moment of weakness to show, and then to strike at that weakness, right? And it's about, again, it's waiting for the world to provide the opportunity rather than you forcing your opportunity out is another way of looking at it. The 8th house I can go on forever because there's so much to it. I know I'm not going to do it justice in this video, and I'm only going to let this go for like another minute or two, maybe. I would say another thing with Scorpio, the feminine qualities of Scorpio, and I want to really get this point, especially when we talk about the 8th house. The 8th house has a component where people will say this is the house where you find truth, okay? And I tend to say it's not truth that you find. It's not truths, okay? So what do I mean by that? And I might have touched on this a little bit on a prior video, but real quick, one of the things I wanted people to know, or people in general to know, you people, sorry, is the concept of femininity. It will never make a positive statement. Femininity is not about what is. It is always about what is not, right? The ruler of the not, the ruler of the negative, the rulers, the energy that's associated with what isn't is femininity. Masculinity only exists to be able to maybe ascertain what is. It's very limited in when it does that, but it's very good at it. Femininity is at its best, and when it's understood at the very least, is that it's very good at being able to say what one isn't. So research is found in the 8th house, and research is always about you observe, you take in, right? You run a study, you set it up, you observe the results, you take it in. One of the things that happens with most research is if not all, I mean, it's been a while since I've done my been in college, but it's the concept of the null hypothesis. Is this thing truly different than zero? And if it is truly different than zero, if I remember this is the correct way to do it, then you can include that study. Something has to be significantly different than zero. In colloquial terms, what we do in our generation, it's the term "that ain't it, chief," and Scorpio is not about finding out what something is. It's about determining what is not, because another component that's associated with the 8th house and Scorpio is the component of trust. When you become aware of what could kill you, because when you put your trust in something that is not, you will die. That's another reason why femininity always has a component that's associated with death. The 8th house is associated with death. The 4th house, even in turn, it might be about safety and security. And I didn't talk about this too deeply before, but you can think of it like when, what happens when you invade, someone's home in the 4th house. It's the home. If you go into, when we talk about home invasions, if you walk into a bear's den, what do you think is going to happen to you? You risk your death. It's like the bear views the intruder as potentially going to not only kill it, but it also kills its offspring. And it has to kill that which is not allowed there. There's always a component that's associated with death, especially with the 4th, the 8th, and the 12th. And the 8th, component with death is usually you let something in. You decided to trust when you shouldn't have. And one of the things with Scorpio is it's very scary for Scorpio to trust and to let in because it's so tied to that death notion that's associated with femininity. And but the only way that Scorpio gets to that point of trusting, much the same way that a researcher gets to that point with trusting its data, when they know that they can't determine what the data set is not. It's not saying what it is. It's saying I have a bunch of data and I know what it isn't, right? So now let's figure out what it is. And that happens in that next house, the 9th house. So, I think I'm going to leave it here for right now. I'm just going to upload this finally after all this time. I've been having, lots of people kind of, recently it's, this channel has been kind of popping up again, in terms of, people asking for ideas, but hopefully this helps a little bit. I will definitely probably do a lot more videos in the future, maybe going into each house specifically, more than I have here. But, hopefully this is good for you, and I should have another episode up shortly after that I recorded months ago. So that one's, it'll be good. So, all right. See you soon.